Hello, everyone. My name is Tim Selden. I'm president of the Montessori Foundation, and this is Finding the Perfect Match, Recruit and Retain Your Ideal Enrollment. Today, it's also the Courage to Lead, because my colleague, Dr. Paul Epstein, co-author in crime of The Montessori Way and other books to come, is here from Beijing, China, and we're thrilled to be able to premiere this particular workshop, which we're developing into a leadership retreat and a book and more. And I'm really glad that we're able to do this. Clint, before we get started, let me introduce you. This is my colleague, Clint Lausch. He is the founder of AIMS. I won't even tell you what that stands for, but he's also in charge of Montessori Growth Suite and the Montessori Enrollment Accelerator Program. Clint, what homework do we have today for housekeeping?
Well, as always, whether it's this session, the Thursday sessions that we have, you can always go to Montessori Foundation YouTube page so you get all the really great recordings. We're hoping we will be launched by now, but hopefully this week when we have our new Circle community, we're bringing together everybody at a nice community forum. That's also going to be another really great place for our recordings to live, as well as templates and playbooks that we're able to gather from these great sessions. So definitely keep an eye out for that. I'm really excited about that. Again, these sessions have been great for all of us to collaborate, but then having another forum, if you will, for us to share advice, tips, ask questions, give feedback. It's another great place for us all to learn and grow together. So again, that's going to be called the Circle with the Montessori Foundation. So yeah, that's exciting. It's coming soon, and I think that's it. And as of right now, as you can see, this is not your normal webinar format. This is webcast. So these are designed hopefully to be um, interactive, conversational. So if you have a question, feel free to raise your hand or unmute yourself. You can always use the chat, but feel free to unmute yourself and engage in the conversation. Anything I missed,
Great.
Tim?
I think that's it.
All
What
right.
we're doing today is we're talking about the courage to lead. And we're going to start off with the whole question of what does that mean? Dr. Epstein, when you think about the courage when it comes to school leadership, what comes to your mind?
Well, first, hi everyone. It's a delight for me to be able to be here with you. As Tim mentioned, I've just come in from Beijing, China. And if we were to ask school leaders in China the same question about what does that mean, the courage to lead, we would get a very different answer because it's a very different culture. So I think culture very much is part of this idea of courage. It's also very much a part of what does it mean to be a leader. We respond very differently in different cultures. We also respond very differently to these questions, I think, based on our experience. I can think of myself when I first began as a school leader, and then many, many decades later, how I would answer this question. So, courage, I think, is something we assume we should have. I think courage is something we should assume is part of our everyday work. And I think also we can identify many times as leaders when we face difficult situations, difficult decisions, difficult conversations, difficult upsets, difficult, and I'm going to say this very deliberately, difficult celebrations. And why would a celebration be difficult? Because it can give us many feelings that may be difficult to process when things are going really well. And courage, I think, is part of all of that. One of the things that is part of my definition, and then Tim, let's hear from everybody else, is leaders. I think what differentiates us from school teachers who have big work to do, who are doing amazing big work, and what differentiates us from perhaps parents who also have a big work being parents raising their own children, or school board members who also have big important things to do. It's the school leader that has no choice we have to get things done. We're the ones responsible for making the everyday happen, for growing the school, for taking the school into new directions. We signed up to do all of that. We're committed to making the unknown, the unhappening, the not happening, making all that happen. And that's where courage for me starts to show up. How do we make something new? How do we work with people who are excited for the change, people who are really unhappy about the change, and all the things that go on with our everyday work for leading? I think to lead is to bring people into new places, unknown situations, and that's the courage, the guts, the commitment to, I'm going to make this happen. I'm going to make people aware of what we're doing, invite people to come on board, invite people to change. I'm not going to make up their mind, but I'm certainly going to make possible new activities, new ways of doing things, or strengthen what we are doing, stop doing what's not working. And all of that in our everyday work for me is where the courage comes in. Because without the courage, I don't think we're going to be able to do the work that we've decided as leaders we're here to do. So, Tim, let me start off that way and see if we might get some responses and some folks voicing from their own experiences how courage is working or not working for their situations.
Anyone want to jump in? When did you exhibit courage? When did you find yourself in trepidation about, oh my God, do I dare do this? Think about
Hi.
that board. Hi.
Hi, I'll be happy to share. I'm Angela. This is my first year as head of school. Um, and the courage I am feeling every single day is the board hired me, and I know this is not a new story, um, but the board hired me to realign the school back to the philosophy of Dr. Montessori. Um, the challenging part has been the 5% who have been very loud, who have discovered in spending some time with me that they actually don't want the Montessori philosophy for themselves as an employee or as a family. But the courageous part is just sticking to the philosophy as I know it, because there are foundational tenets that are the same for all of us, but also at the end of the day, even some of the small details that are my own interpretation, still being courageous to stand strong on those. What I've seen my mentors do, or in discussions with the board of what our school's going to believe, what our history, when the school was first founded, what was the foundation they were standing on. For a few years, as they got away from that, I was hired to do the hard task of getting back to that. So I knew that it would be a 3-year cycle. My first year initiative was just focusing on the prepared environment and getting back to that basic, making sure we have all of the curriculum, we have the materials, we're using them the way that our training taught us. And then my year 2 initiative is going to be the prepared adults, which I think will be even more difficult. Um, I love it. It was the right choice, and it's also requiring daily courage. So it's why I joined today. So
Thanks.
thanks
Glad
for
you're
having
here.
me.
And there will be, by the way, in the Washington, D.C. Area, sometime this summer, a 2-day weekend retreat at my alma mater, the Barry School, a workshop that hopefully Paul and I together will lead people through a whole process. So this is just a little appetizer. Christy, I see you've opened up your camera. Is that because you like to talk? You don't have to, but you
Um,
can.
Christy, if you wanted to, just if you'd pause for just a moment, I wanted to just say, Angela, yeah, I hear the courage loudly in what you shared, in what you described. I think courage because if we're honest about our everyday work, we might have to admit we don't always know what we're doing. And we may have an idea about where we want to arrive, where we'd like to end up, but we may have actually not a very confident idea of how we're going to get there. And we think we should go this way, but then things happen, people say things, and all of a sudden we're wondering, is this worth it? Is this aggravation or the noise and all the things that go on in the everyday? What you shared is so very, very real. And congratulations to you for being involved with this in your first year. A lot of courage.
Yeah, well, you were hired to be courageous. Good for you, Angela. So my experience with as a consultant with Montessori schools around the world is that there is a largely held position that to be a Montessori leader is to be non-authoritarian, non-hierarchical. We just don't steamroll over our staff. We listen to our owner or the board, unless we are the owner. But basically, we try to make peace. And I think the courage to lead, in my mind, is in part the courage to be willing to have a board unhappy with you if you really disagree with what they're wanting to do. Willingness to have staff unhappy with you, at least in some part, like Angela, you described, if they really discover that Montessori isn't what they want. But the idea of Paul and I were talking this morning about the idea of a leader as something like the conductor of an orchestra. Our job is to get them playing the same music and playing in some kind of coordinated manner. So we produce a pleasant sound instead of chaos. Paul, back to you.
Yeah, as a conductor of a symphony, it's really curious to admit the people in the orchestra are better at what they do than the conductor ever could possibly be. These are the best violin players, the best trumpet players, all those instrument people are clearly better at their instrument than the conductor could ever be. But the conductor is the one who's got to get them all playing together at the same time, at the same speed, making that comfortable, happy musical sound that brings up passion and all of that. And sometimes conductors also don't know exactly what they're supposed to do when the orchestra member says, no, no, I'm not wanting to do it that way. I've been playing for 20 years. You've been conducting for 3 days. No, we're not going to do it that way. So courage, I think, shows up then as a commitment for our beliefs, our values, our commitment to our vision of what we want our school community to appear and do and how we're going to grow. And I think without that commitment, courage is very difficult. And I think what separates us as school leaders is we are committed to making the school happen. The community, the aspect of the community as a learning community, growing together. We may not know exactly how to get there, but we're very clear and committed to what it is we want it to look like. I think all of us together have a wealth of experience for how do we get there? How do we influence people in the community? How do we influence the people who are against it or not happy about it or are not interested? They're not unhappy, they're not happy, they're just not interested. And all the different ways that people in the community are behaving and responding. We are the conductors, the leaders that have to find ways to weave everyone together. And as I just mentioned, I think in this group and in any group of us, there's a wealth of experience of how have you done that? What have you said to parents who don't care, who don't want this? To teachers who believe they're doing everything that should be done and there's not anything more for them to learn? Or the teachers or the parents who are excited about new learning, but are frustrated with everyone else who do not seem to be learning. I, Tim, would welcome hearing from everyone these sorts of everyday experiences that you're encountering and how you're responding. I think our response is our ways of being courageous.
Don't want to put anyone on the spot, but again, we graciously invite you to unmute and speak up if you feel called on to share.
I'll say as somebody not in the leadership position, and I'm a Montessori coach now for a school, for a public school, and I see all the time the courage to just stick to the values of Montessori because especially in a public school, people come in and say, we have this test, and how we do on that test relies it means whether or not our charter is renewed. And so it takes a lot of courage to stick with Montessori rather than the worksheets that they give you. And in what I feel in my role as the coach is a whole lot of courage to tell people they should stick to that, especially when they're new Montessori teachers. So I know my directors must be feeling the same thing.
Cheryl, you say that as a coach, you're not a leader. And I think it might be worth doing a quick unpack of that because in a lot of ways you are a leader. What you're not is in charge of saying you're hired, you're not hired, you're fired, you're not, you're not their boss, but you're their coach.
Yes, you're right. And taking Montessori action leadership right now, I have come up with the term untitled leader. For everybody. I feel like I haven't invented that term, but that's the term I've been using because for teachers also, we're untitled leaders, and the difficulty in a Montessori school is you have a lot of untitled leaders and only one or two titled leaders. And that requires a lot of courage.
Yeah. Courage, I think in an everyday sense, do we agree it can mean some kind of feeling brave, some act of bravery. I know we need to get from here to there. I'm not sure how we're going to get there, but I'm going to be brave, and I'm going to be brave and tell somebody honestly what I think about what they're saying, or I'm going to be brave and I'm going to tell somebody honestly what I think about how they're behaving, or how I wish they would speak, how I wish they would behave. This kind of bravery. Where does the bravery come from? Because I think if we can understand where it comes from, it might help us become more effective with being courageous if we understand the roots of courage. And again, I welcome hearing from everyone. I think we all have thoughts and strong ideas as to where does this bravery, where does this courageousness come from?
Well, research is showing that confidence comes from doing first, that we don't have the confidence before we do something. Like we can't wait for the confidence. So I would say that bravery must work along the same lines, having not done the research.
Okay. Okay. There's a comment. First of all, Cheryl, thank you. And then in the chat, I'm reading a comment that says, bravery comes from understanding that I'll get through it no matter how hard it is. Understanding, I'm wondering and forgive me if I pronounce your name incorrectly, Fazida, if you're also thinking about confidence, I'll get through this. I have some confidence that I can get through it. I wonder if that's your meaning. Perhaps you'll yeah, thanks.
Sorry, I don't know if you can see me. Yeah,
Yep.
I don't like to use the word confidence because I always feel like maybe I'm gonna be too overconfident. But I think believing that I can handle it, and then going through with it, understanding, I guess, internalizing and having that positive mindset that I'll achieve it. It will be hard, but I will get through it.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for that clarification. So this commitment, I'll get through this. I'm committed to getting through it. For me, confidence and commitment are two elements that make up this idea of courage. I'm not suggesting one or the other. I'm suggesting a commitment and also the confidence work together, happen together. What I'm suggesting is before deciding, will I speak in a certain way to teachers or board members, or will I speak in a certain way to parents, or will I just listen? Before making that decision, I sometimes ask myself, what am I committed to? And what am I confident about? Confident in myself as a way of getting ready. Tim, I want to go back to the orchestra metaphor. I know that conductors, before they start conducting, are already listening to the music. They can hear it in their heads. And that's centering and focusing them on what the real music is about to sound like and what it should sound like. For me, I wonder, I operate with what is it that I'm committed to? Am I committed to trying to really connect with these people who are excited about the leading that's going on or who are upset about the leading? Am I committed to connecting with them? Or am I just trying to survive? And to be honest, sometimes the answer is it's both. Just help me get through this.
I think that's a very important point. As one person said to me many years ago, it's great to have principles, but I've got a mortgage to pay. So when you're an employee and you're hired at the whim of a board or of a private owner, or when you're an owner and you're worried about, will I be able to make payroll or pay the bills or send my kid to college this month, you may find yourself waffling when you start getting a group of teachers who form a cabal who really disagree with what you want to do. On the other hand, we don't want to pick fights. I mean, we're not looking to say, because you don't believe in cursive as your movable alphabet and your sandpaper letters, you're not really a Montessorian. As Tiny Cabin Montessori recently put up online, she burns her diploma because, clearly she's not a Montessori. The idea, though, is to be a leader is not to simply avoid conflict. It's not simply to make people feel safe. On the other hand, we do want them to feel safe. But the question is, at what cost? At what point do we have the courage to say, guys, this is where we're going. Are you with the program or are you not? How do we work this? And one of the things
Yeah.
we're going to do in the summer workshop is give you really practical tools to not only look at your own experience before you came to the workshop, but very practical tools about how the best consulting firms help institutions to manage change and conflict.
That's true that sometimes it feels like what's going on is really chaotic and out of control. But there are strategies that we can use as leaders that allow us to stay focused, stay committed to what it is we're leading and why we're doing what we're doing, that also brings along the community in a very orderly way. People may be upset, but let's make a bigger frame for this whole thing. In the classroom, we actually say a lot to the children, whether they're early childhood, elementary, or adolescents. This is Montessori and you have choice. But we also know when we say that, they actually, at some point, don't have choice. And it's very important that we be honest about that. And what I'm referring to is the child had no choice. They had to come to the school. Somebody chose that for them. In elementary, another example is you don't have a choice. You have to do math every day, or you have to do science every day. At some point, when we work with the adults in our community, it's the same thing. You've already chosen. You decided to become a member of this community. If you really don't want to continue being with us, we'll miss you. We will hope to hear from you from time to time, and hope you'll allow us to let you know what's going on after you leave us. And all of that can be done with grace and courtesy and with dignity, and should be done that way. And the more I started to hold on to that, courage became easier. Courage became easier because I realized it's not me against the world. It's not me standing alone in the face of this massive invading hordes that drooling teeth and all those crazy movie images. Instead, it was I'm a partner with helping people decide and discover what it is they really need, what it is they really want. And with grace and with courtesy and with dignity, you really need and want in your life to go left. And God bless, we wish you well, but we're going right. And the choice is, would you like to continue going to the right? Yes or no? And what that required was me letting go. It required letting go of people who were valued in the community, parents who loved the teachers, children who loved the teachers, but with all respect and with all kindness, we want different things. And it's time to say farewell. Once I became confident about that I can't control other people's final decisions, I can't control what it is that when people want things different from me, courage became much, much more available, much more easier. Tim alluded to some structure. So the structure that I'm now describing, we can, and in the summer workshop, we'll discuss as a set of skills that people bring to the community. We'll discuss what people bring in terms of their able to work with procedures that allow us to coordinate, collaborate, and working together. We'll talk about styles of leadership. Sometimes we need to be courageously authoritative, and other times we need to be courageously more democratic, and more sometimes courageously just listening. So, with this understanding that ultimately people can and will and do make their own decisions and choices, it becomes much easier for us to lead, because we're leading from our commitment to Montessori, from our commitment to its values, our school community and its values. And the courage is to stand for our commitment, stand for what we believe, and then be really, really focused. We're going to go right, but do people have the skills we need for making that right turn? Do we have the procedures or systems in place so that we can make that right turn successfully? Do I have at my fingertips different leadership styles that allow me to respond and also be proactive as we make the turn and continue going in this new way? That's a kind of a brief overview of some of the strategies that we'll be very specifically speaking about in the summer. Tim, I
One of
don't
the
know if I'm making sense. It could be I'm overwhelmed with some jet lag.
You're doing fine for someone that just got off a plane. Um, One of the things that we say is that clarity is the key to success. Cheryl's heard that endlessly. I think Paul has too. All of you who have ever taken a course with me know about that. The idea is that culture eats strategy for breakfast, which is an old saying from Google. We believe that any school has got to have clarity, coherency, consistency from class to class, from level to level, from year to year. It doesn't mean that things don't ever change. Doesn't mean that we don't grow. Doesn't mean we don't realize we need to take a fresh look. But the idea is we have to move in a coordinated manner so that a child's experience, a parent's experience, a teacher's experience is predictable. What makes people crazy is you go home and you may have had this as a spouse or in a romantic relationship or a friendship or maybe with your parents, where some days you had the good mom and some days she just was in a mood and you couldn't do anything right. That makes people crazy. We need to have predictability. One of the things we know from social justice is the idea what people really want is to feel seen, to feel heard, to feel safe, which doesn't mean that anything goes. So you can do anything and it's going to be okay. But the idea is that what we're trying to do, and this is why I use the orchestra as a metaphor, is we're trying to get, I'm going to change metaphors, a group of cats and turn them a herd and get them all dancing in the same manner. And what we want is whether you're an Islamic school, a Jewish day school, a Catholic school, a public school, whether you're a Montessori school, a Waldorf school, a Steiner, whatever, Reggio Emilia school, or a very traditional military academy. The reality is, all great schools have a clear sense of who we are, what we're about, how we treat people, how we do things. And to me, the courage to be a leader, in part, is to hold that forth and to really advocate this is what we're all about. It's kind of like being, if you will, a rabbi or a pastor. It's not that you're fire and brimstone and threatening people. It's this is who we are. This is what the message is all about. Are we in agreement here? And part of it is teaching, because that's what a rabbi or a guide does. We are teachers. And we're trying to inspire. We're trying to help people come to consensus. We're trying to remind them because they drift off course. All back to you.
Appreciate the passion, Tim. Thank you. Thank you. I wanted to share some examples of courageous leadership. One example would be speaking truth clearly, respectfully, especially when people are not hearing truth or they have a different meaning about truth. And when that happens, we need to pause and come back together to say, what is it that's truthful for you? What is it that's for me? And as a courageous leader, recognizing that other people can have different truths and different ideas and also be right. And that's a very, very powerful commitment to allowing people with different opinions, different expectations, different experiences to also be right. Now, how can we come to an agreement about our different versions of the truth? How can we come to agreement and collaborate and coordinate together? And the answer to that is, as leaders, leading the conversation, being open to and being able to listen and hear other people's points of view, other people's truths. Another courageous act of a leader would be making decisions guided by our mission and values, not by fear. I'm afraid that this person doesn't think well about me or will tell people, make up things about me. So I'm going to back off. No, no, we need to, as leaders, make decisions that are guided by our core values, our mission, even our vision, but not by our fear. And sometimes I've had to delay a meeting. I've delayed a conversation. I wasn't ready. I was just swimming in the pond of fear, and I needed to allow that processing of myself to take place so that I could focus again on what I'm really committed to for the community. Another example of courageous leadership is holding on to those boundaries. I had a parent one time who was so upset with me, just lividly upset. She was convinced that education cannot happen in a 6 to 9 classroom when the children are spending so much time with materials on the floor. And she wanted to remove her children and take everybody, all the other children out at the same time. The boundary, of course, that I was holding on to was our Montessori core pedagogical education principles, even though I knew it was going to cost a lot of enrollment. This parent was really livid, really upset. Another example of courageous leadership is staying firm, staying steady when nothing is going on other than criticism. When everybody in the board and your staff, administrative staff, and the teachers and the parents and everybody is criticizing you, you don't understand us, you don't know who we really are, and standing calmly, standing confidently, or at least pretending to be confident, but certainly with a lot of bravery, a lot of courage in the face of that criticism. And one of the strategies that is very powerful when you're surrounded by criticism is to simply ask one question: help me understand. Help me understand what you mean when you say. Help me understand what you mean when you said. Help me understand. Those 3 words, when I came across them in some research, became my best friend. Truly allowed me to shift from the fear to the curiosity. I really want to know. Help me understand when you say when you're criticizing me about, help me understand. Another example of bravery, of courage, would be to choose growth over comfort. A lot of us, including myself, would prefer comfort. We've worked hard. It's taken us months, years to arrive here. I'm exhausted, or this is really working well. Why on earth should I want to change? Many of us understand that we have bias. And it turns out psychologically, bias is very important to us. Bias allows us to do things more effectively, more efficiently. But the other side of bias is it becomes our comfort zone. So choosing growth over the comfort zone can be a strong act of courage, right? Don't rock the boat or don't fix what's not broken. Those sorts of expressions would have us stay in the comfort zone. But where does the choice for growth come from? It comes again from our commitment to our core Montessori values, our core school community values. And finally, one more act of courage that I'd like to share would be admitting mistakes. Letting people know, because they do know when a mistake has happened, and just being open, being honest, being humble, and let people know not only did I make the following mistake, I'm aware of what it's going to cost, but I'm committed to 2 things. I'm committed to fixing this, repairing it, and here's what I'm learning from the mistakes. I think this act of courage, admitting mistakes, is essential for a school community because without mistakes, learning can never happen. I like to I like having a sign in my office that says, mistakes are welcome here. And we don't need to make the same mistake 1,000 times unless it's taking 1,000 times for me to finally learn the lesson. But mistakes should be welcomed, and it should be safe in a school community for us to tolerate and embrace and welcome and love making of mistakes. Safety mistakes are, however, not the best mistakes for us to make. And mistakes around safety do happen. And we need to be courageous in helping people take care of anyone who was hurt or harmed due to a safety mistake, while at the same time focusing on here's the repair, here's what we're going to do next. So the leadership shows up when we do speak truthfully. The leadership shows up when we do let people know again and again and again what is our mission, what are our values, and not dwelling in the fear. Leadership shows up when we stand firmly, maybe speak gently, about our boundaries. Yes, you would like to have textbooks and workbooks, and you would like to have all kinds of AI things in the classroom, but that's not part of our core values and our purposes for our 2-year-old children. We don't have textbooks and workbooks for the 2-year-olds. Stay firm for the boundaries is an act of leadership, leaders acting in courage. Staying steady when people are criticizing us. You're demonstrating your leadership by asking, help me understand. Choosing growth over comfort, choosing new opportunities for learning strengthens the community as a learning community, and so too does admitting mistakes and telling people, here's what we're learning, here's what we're going to be doing going forward. Well, I've shared some 6 or so courage examples. I'd love to hear from everybody, either more examples or your reactions and responses to what I just shared.
Hi, my name is Kelly. I'm not a head of school. I'm actually a teacher. This is my 6th year, but we've had quite a change in parental culture we've seen, especially this year. We're definitely we've been growing the past couple of years, and I just know about a lot of these things because a few of incidences in my own upper elementary classroom. Differences in parent opinions and how they believe we're doing things and not really communicating very well, I guess, or just saying, um, that's not what this is. I know Montessori, and you're not doing that. And so therefore pulling their kids and whatever. A very reactive culture is what I'm seeing. And even through our attempts to communicate and wanting to, we're all on the same team and we're here for the child and let's work together. My director and I have worked a lot, really, really closely on a few of those things, and it has happened in a few other classrooms. And again, it's kind of like Angela said, I think like the 5%, but they are very loud. And I guess my director's concerns are we can handle that. And I feel like we handle it in a way coming from our core values and philosophy, even though it's really hard when you have a reactive parent coming at you very aggressively and threatening things. But her concern, I guess, is more so we started out very small and it was all about this culture that was breeded through word of mouth, right? Good word of mouth. And now it's like these are very loud people going out and now possibly speaking poorly about things that aren't even true, right? And so it's very concerning to still like we know what we're doing is good and right by the child, and we're encouraging the independence and the learning and responsibility and accountability. But word of mouth is saying some different things, and that's a little bit hard to relinquish control over things you don't have control over, and to just keep doing what you know is right. But this just seems to have really blown up in the last year or two. And so this webcast seemed to come along in a very timely manner, because it was like, my goodness, this is very different than when I started this even 6 years ago. And so we are thinking ahead, and like next year, I mean, before parents come in, we do tours and my director gives them, and we explain what the philosophy is, what is expected, those things like that. But even next year at our open house, we're planning to do more of a formal presentation by the teachers explaining, this is what the classroom looks like, and this is what the children will be doing. And just to give the parents like more of a front load of like, this is what you can expect of your child, because it's like, never really had to do that before. There was just a lot of trust placed in us. And now it's like, we have to earn that trust from the very beginning, which as I should, right? But it's just like, it's very different now. And so we're seeing that we have to really change how we're approaching some of those things. And so I appreciate a lot of these things speaking to courage, because um, those are exactly what we need to hear.
Yeah. Kelly, if
Paul, hang on a second. Kelly, I would love to talk to you and your director. This is something Paul and I and Robin and the others at the foundation have all dealt with many times. But I want to leave you with a quick thought. You're a
Yes.
young woman. I think your school's been dating all the wrong guys. Um, I would also say it takes a lot more than a single meeting to articulate who we are, what we're about. I would I would lovingly invite the parents who are out there in the parking lot mafia to have a conversation. As Paul said, tell me more. I want to understand why you think this is true. And the whole idea of if what they want for their children is really different from what you are, the question is how can we have a Montessori way of divorce?
Right.
If we're the wrong school, it's okay. Let's not make each other wrong. Let's just find common ground where we can, and where we really disagree, let's look at the question of are we good enough? Because everything is imperfect. Um, are we the right place for your child? If we're not the right place, God bless. Let's not make the school wrong just because your understanding of Montessori and ours may not be on the same page.
Right. And that was attempted many times,
Mhm.
with a few of them, wanting to communicate. But when you have an unwilling parent, that makes it
Mhm.
impossible too.
Mm. Kelly, I would also add, if you think about all the things that you and your school community have done or thought about doing, what's something going forward that you feel would require a lot of courage? What is it that would take a lot of courage or some amount of courage to do next?
Yeah, I mean, I think especially just leaning back on the core beliefs and philosophy, and trusting that, like you mentioned, speaking truth respectfully and clearly, and understanding that that parent does have a truth, right? Or those parents do have a truth, and they're ultimately just wanting to do the best for their child, as are we. And there's got to be some common ground. But for some reason, sometimes there's just such a reactive, emotional response that we don't even, even though we've tried, the reaction is like, well, I'm just going to pull my kid. And unfortunately, then you just kind of have to be like, well, okay. And, I'd love to talk about this further with you, and let us know if you have any questions. We're here. But I mean, that ultimately that's their decision.
Mhm.
But having courage is really just hearing these things set out, and the help me understand to get to the bottom of things and find some common ground. Um, and the choosing the growth over the comfort, because I think that's where we've been. We've been very comfortable, and and now we're growing and we're starting to get more children, more parents, and having, of course, different beliefs. And so just being okay sitting in the uncomfortability of that growth requires a lot of courage.
Yeah, I get the summary. Thank you. I'm sensing after some years of the community's way of educating children, communicating to parents, supporting each other professionally and personally, all of that working, somebody woke up and decided it was time for earthquakes and volcanoes. And and
Yeah, I guess so.
yeah, and my goodness, certainly you and others never expected that to happen, and certainly don't want that to continue. Perhaps, as you said, the courage now is to sit with this tremendous amount of discomfort,
Hmm.
but
I would,
not just,
I would,
Tim, if I can just finish,
yeah.
not just to sit with it, but to understand what is it that these parents are asking for? What's behind the noise? What is it that they're not getting? What is it that they need, but they're not experiencing happening for themselves or their children?
Hmm.
Um, who in the community takes on the courageous act of, I'm going to go find out.
Yeah.
I'm going to be the one, I'm going to call them up, or I'm going to meet them in the parking lot and say, come in for a coffee or a tea or whatever you do. Who's going to be the one to do those things to find out? Those people may leave anyways, but at least you'll have parted with understanding as
Right.
opposed to parting with mystery.
Hmm.
Could be a step of courage.
Yeah.
I would say that I think it's equally important to go out and market like mad to the right people. I'm going to quickly turn off my camera and get up and go meet someone at the door. I'll be right back.
Yeah.
And I think that was, you know, I got two new upper L students in my class this year, which was great, right? But they came from public school. They were wanting alternative education. Um, yeah, sorry, that's me. Oh, sorry, here's my director. It's okay, I got it. Oh, hi. And uh, there was just a very, it was like it seemed really good the way that we presented it, and then later there was, I don't know, there wasn't a misunderstanding, but
Mm.
later on it was just very it wasn't what they wanted, and so they just pulled and were very reactive. It started out really good, but I
Mhm.
think some of it came from a lack of trust in their other school experiences too, to
That,
where that
yeah.
kind of trailed with them, and so it
Yeah.
was like almost nothing we could do was okay either. It for
That
to
that's all.
me,
That's all. Sorry to interrupt, but I do want on this interesting what you just shared. One of the strategies we're going to look at this summer is inevitably when people come to an organization or a group, inevitably there's going to be a period of storm. And part of leading courageously is to recognize the signs that are saying the clouds are getting darker, the storm is getting closer, and I don't want to mislead anybody. I don't know of any way to prevent the storm, but I do know of ways, and we're going to share ways of how to get through the storm peacefully without people getting harmed by, to use the storm analogy. It sounds
Mhm.
as if once two students came, that means you inevitably we're going to have a storm for for sure. I mean, you can count on that happening. How do you get through a storm? It sounds like you and your school are doing what needs to be done. go back to the core values.
Mm-hmm.
Go back to the core agreements of what it is we do, the procedures that we have, the real fundamental core procedures. Until people are choosing them again, the storm continues. Once they start choosing the core agreements again, the storm starts to lessen. And the organization, the group, goes to a much higher level of trust. Storms turn out to be very valuable. They're not fun, they're not comfortable, but they're extremely valuable for the growth of the community. You're in a storm. You are in
Yeah.
a storm.
This is clearly a highly charged issue. And this is a perfect example of what this issue of courage is all about. Kelly, I put my personal number in the chat. Should you or your principal want to chat with me or other people from the foundation, just feel free to reach out. Leslie says, storms clear away negative energy. That is so true.
There we go.
Um,
Look forward to.
I wonder as we're getting ready to wrap up, if anyone else who is turned on their camera would love to say anything as we begin to wrap up, either because you've got another piece or whatever.
I'd like to throw out just a really quick thought that I think it helped me a lot. If I picture it this way, I think it would help you too, Kelly, that I'm seeing a few families, sounds like you are too, that are trying the philosophy on. They're not wed to it. So them exiting just meant it just didn't fit right.
Yeah.
It's very possible. I love an expression, Montessori may be for most every child. It may not be for every adult, and that's okay. That's okay. But there is a leadership act of courage to manage the divorce process so that people are peacefully and amicably able to separate. But as Kelly shared, she's got a group of parents who are vocally unhappy and vocally throwing out grenades and this kind of stuff, all of which suggests that you're in a storm, and to get through a storm involves several steps, such as meeting with people individually or in small groups if that's appropriate, and simply asking them, help me understand, help me understand. And being committed to the core values, being committed to the core agreements. Very much I hear you really want your child to have more experiences with workbooks and textbooks, and thank you for letting me know that. But in our Montessori way, we do this, this, and that. I wonder if this is a school you would like to continue to have for your child. And asking that question can be a very definite act of courage.
Yeah, we talk about the loyal opposition. Again, as we get ready to wrap up, I see a few faces on screen and just want to ask if there's anyone who would just like to unmute and have an opportunity to say something. We don't want to cut you off. Seeing
Hi.
nothing. Hi, Leslie.
Hi. Everything that I heard today resonated so much and it was so incredibly helpful. The phrase is Montessori divorce. I didn't know that's what we needed, but I think it is sometimes. And to Kelly, exactly that. It's so easy to see from the outside in, but listening to your situation, I've been there, and it can be so damaging for people like that to stay. We're trying to run the course of something that they've chosen to be a part of, but maybe they didn't have time to gain that trust joining later on. But thank you all so much. I've been writing notes. This has been so incredibly helpful. I didn't realize how much I needed this until I heard it. And just so many days I feel like I'm swarmed. I'm sitting in that pool of fear and that criticism. And that's what scares me sometimes. So just maybe finding the courage to accept that people will criticize you and that's okay. So that's what I'm going to work on. But thank you all so much.
Appreciate it,
Thank you,
Leslie.
Leslie.
For some of you may want to have your schools join the Circle, which is going to be a rather affordable group of friends of the Montessori Foundation. It's not meant to replace AMS, AMI, National Association of Independent Schools. It is literally intended to be a circle of friends, of equals, and it gets you consultation from the foundation, from people like Paul and Robin and friends of Foundation, Cheryl, who was a staff member for many years, a whole bunch of us. And the intention is to create a support network that lives outside of the accrediting bodies. Marlise Colantona, I see you there. Did you want to say something, my dear?
Just so much appreciation as always, and I guess I'll just throw out that if people wanted to read a book, it's one that I learned about from you many years ago. Tomorrow's Children by Riane Eisler was a great help for me. When you're talking about families' values and the values of your school and wanting to understand more, that's been such a great tool. But yeah, every minute that I have ever gotten to spend with you and the circle of people that you've brought together, Tim, has always been so beneficial. And as Leslie, who I never met before till today, here was saying, we learn so much from other people's questions too, and sometimes things that we didn't know that we didn't know. So yes, this is so helpful.
That's great. Thanks, Marlise. I should say, since you brought up my friend, Dr. Riane Eisler, I'm on her board. We are getting ready, Robin and I and some other colleagues with Riane, we're putting together a new edition of Tomorrow's Children. We're updating it all. We're turning it into courses through the foundation. And if you haven't read that book, I highly recommend it. I believe she explains Montessori better than we do ourselves. Paul, I want to thank you so much for making time and suggesting that we change the agenda for this particular webinar and squeeze you in. It's been great. I look forward to our retreats this summer. I think we're going to do a few across the United States. More specific to come. Marlise, it will be at Barry, one of them, for those of you who are the Washington, D.C. area. And we look forward. By the way, if you're in the Washington, D.C. area on April 25th, a Saturday, I will be at Barry. We're doing a one-day free, kind of like a mini retreat. I will be addressing some of the issues that Paul and I are talking about. It will not be what we're going to do in the summer, but we do invite you, if, look out. You're on the email list if you're here today. We'll be letting you know about specific times and arrangements, and we invite you to join us at Barry. Kind of a homecoming. All right, everyone. Thanks for coming. We appreciate you so much. Paul and I say thank you. God bless. Some of you we'll see at the American Montessori Society starting on Thursday. And we do have, the foundation does have a booth. We'll be looking forward to you stopping by and sitting and chatting. Bye, everyone.